very good.
Okay, so these are all your numbers, right? Okay, and x bar is this. So you're going to say that minus that squared, that minus that squared, that minus that squared, and you're going to do each. So it's the distance from each data point to the mean, square it. So 82 minus this squared, this minus this squared, and you're taking each data point minus the mean, squaring it, and then you're adding them all up and dividing by n minus 1. Does that make sense?
And what is n?
N is how many?
How many there
1,
are?
2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Okay, and that gets you the variance?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you.
You good? Yes. Perfect. Yeah. Okay, so when you add up everything in the numerator, what do you get? All the squared stuff should get you to 376 divided by 5, which is 75.2, and that's the variance. We want the standard deviation. We take the square root of 75.2, and you're going to get 8.67. Okay, so what that does is it takes each single individual data point, taking each data point and subtracting the mean from it. So you can look at each data point and see how far your information is varying from the mean. If you have a lot of data that's way out, that means there's going to be a big difference between that data point and the mean, so you're going to have a higher variance. If a lot of your data is right around the mean, then you're not going to have a very high variance, because when you subtract all those individual differences, it's going to be small. So this is an excellent measure of variability, because it takes each individual data point into consideration. Does anybody have any questions? I think there's like 2 or 3 questions on your homework where you do this. So if you set up a system in Excel, you can actually drag it down really fast. But doing it by hand helps. For me, if I'm forced to do it by hand, then I know what I'm doing. If I just do it in Excel, then it makes it seem like it's all complicated, because then you have all the formulas and all those things. So, okay, any questions on this? No? All right. Okay, I have like 1, 2, 3 more formulas to give you today for your homework. The first one has to do with grouped data. So we're going to calculate the mean and the standard deviation. So right now you have 2 formulas for the mean and 2 formulas for the standard deviation. At the end of class, you're going to have 4 formulas for the mean and 3 formulas for a standard deviation. Okay? So you're going to need to keep them straight. You can do this. You can do it, right? Because you don't have to memorize them. Just put them on your formula sheet, right? So the question is, can you recognize when to use which one? That's, if you get when to use which formula, then everything else is pretty easy. So this is what grouped data looks like. You have audit time and it's grouped, because I don't just have 10 days. I have a category from 10 to 14 days, and that happened 4 times. So that's my frequency, and this data would be grouped. Okay, so this is what I'm talking about when you're talking about grouped data. All that stuff you created with the pivot tables, that's grouped data. Okay, so this is the formula for a sample mean, right? This is the formula for a sample variance. This is the formula for a population mean. This is the formula for a population variance. Okay, and if you look at today's PowerPoint, spring 2014, this slide is on there. So I don't know what you guys are downloading, but okay, I'm giving you 2 more. If the data is grouped, this is the formula for a sample, for the sample mean, and the formula for the sample, the population mean is here. The sample variance is here, and the population variance is here. Okay, so if you notice, the only thing that was added was an F and an M in place of the X. Okay, so F stands for frequency. So frequency would be this column right here. Okay, frequency. M is the midpoint. So I have to figure out, I can't just say 10 4 or 14 times 4, I have to figure out how many, this category occurred 4 times. So what do I pick to put it at? 4, 10 days, 14 days. Well, what you do is you pick the midpoint. To get the midpoint, it's the first number plus the second number divided by 2. So the midpoint here would be what? What's the midpoint between 10 and 14? 10 plus 14 divided by 2 gets you 12. Okay, so my midpoint is 12. Okay, the midpoint between 15 and 19 would be 15 plus 19 divided by 2 is 17. So they're 5 apart. Next one would be 22. Next one would be 27. And the last one would be 32. So these are my midpoints. So if I look at my formula, again, here's my formula. It's the sum of the frequency times the midpoint, and then I'm just going to divide by n. What is n? N is how many, what? How many categories or how many data points? Anybody have a guess? What? Neither?
Categories.
It would be n is the total number that you have. So n is 20. That's a common mistake that people make, so I just wanted you to use some critical thinking so you won't make that mistake. Okay? So n is the total number that you have. So let's go ahead and put the numbers into this formula. I have frequency. So my frequency for the first column is 4 times my midpoint, which is 12. And I'm going to add that to the next one. So I have 8 times 17, and then 5 times 22 plus 2 times 27 plus 1 times 32. Okay? And if you add all that up, you get something. Who's got it?
380.
So what do you get if you add it all up?
380.
I got 380. And we're going to divide by, should I divide by 5 or 20? 20, thank you. Just checking to see if you guys were listening. And that would be 380 divided by 20. So my x bar equals, oh, yes. X bar would be equal to 19 days. Correct? Okay, so you have one problem on your homework where you're going to be doing this. You multiply the frequency times the midpoint and make sure you divide by the total number that you have. Okay? Any questions on that? We're going to work on in just a minute. But I also want to show you how to do the standard deviation or the variance. So if I'm working on the variance, and I'm going to get my midpoints back here as well. Okay, so this is my formula. And we know that x bar equals 19 days. So I start off with F. What's F for my first column? F would be 4, correct? So I say 4. And I'm multiplying it by the midpoint. My midpoint is 12. I'm subtracting x bar, which is 19, and I'm going to square that. Okay? So the next one would be what? What's the next one? And then 22 minus 19 squared. Gosh, it doesn't like the side of the board over here. And then, what do I divide by?
20 minus
20 minus 1. So if you're double checking, you should get 570 minus 19 for a standard deviation of 30. So what would be my, for a variance of 30, what would be my standard deviation? So 5.48 days. Okay? So do you guys see what's happening? Any questions on Jessica? You have a question?
Yeah, after the, what does it say after the 8 minus 17, sorry, 8,
8 minus 17, so I take my frequency, which is 5,
okay,
and I multiply 22 minus 19.
okay,
And then the next one would be 2 times 27 minus 19.
okay.
So you always take the midpoint, and you're subtracting by the standard, the mean from it. Okay? Okay, any questions on this one?
Ask it.
All right,